Thank you. Will the temporary clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Good morning. Chairman Racio,
Here.
Bruce Galloway,
Here.
Gary Gambrell,
Here.
Ben Hershenson,
Here.
Gerald Benson,
Here.
and Linda Waterhouse. Present.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, April 19th.
I move.
Gambrell, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes have been approved. As usual, we will hold public comment after the presentations of both the staff and the applicants. We have one case today, which is a Bonita 75 mixed plan development. A request to rezone 20.99 acres more or less from commercial plan development to commercial plan development / residential plan development to allow 252 multi-family dwelling units, including bonus density units and up to 10,000 square feet commercial use. Let us hear, please, from the staff will go first.
The applicant will go first. I'm just going to give you a brief introduction. Good morning, Mary Zizzo. So this originally began as a mixed plan development. It is now a request to rezone from CPD to CPD RPD, so commercial and residential plan development. The applicant will present, and with this application, at City Council, they will also present a bonus density agreement to request those additional units. We do address that within the zoning application so that you are aware of what our recommendation is at this point. But like I said, it will be two separate applications that are analyzed at City Council. Okay.
And just to clarify, the application for increased density will be made to the City Council.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please, don't go away yet. Please define the bonus density thing. This is where they're paying a fee in order to make it bigger, build more,
Correct.
be
So
specific,
the
please.
standard density in this scenario is 10 dwelling units per acre. You have the option to go up to 15 dwelling units per acre if you provide affordable housing or you provide payment. And so they are choosing the cash contribution.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Since this is a quasi-judicial item, I will swear in all the testimony today. Any of those who intend to give testimony today, or any members of the public who might feel the need at some moment to come up and speak, please, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you very much.
The infamous circle that keeps going around and around. Here we go. Raise your pointer. Great. Forward, backwards, and the laser. Right. Got it. There it is. All right. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and zoning board members. I'm Wayne Arnold, a certified planner with Q. Grady Minor and Associates, and here representing Madison Capital Group. And you were introduced to Todd Blakely with Madison Capital, who's participating remotely today. So with us today, we have Neil Montgomery, who's our counsel on the item. We have Mike Dellett, who's a professional civil engineer in our firm that's here to answer any engineering questions. We have Ted Treesh, who's conducted the traffic analyses and is here to do a short presentation and answer any questions related to traffic. And we have Marco Espinar, who's the biologist that's assisted on this in case there are any environmental questions. So as Mary indicated, this is an existing commercial plan development. It's zoned and approved for 168,000 square feet of mixed commercial, office, retail type uses. The market has obviously shifted in our community, and we are proposing to modify this significantly with respect to the commercial component. The commercial component's going down to just a little over an acre, and we're reducing the commercial to 10,000 square feet as part of the request. And we're asking for 252 multifamily dwelling units. These would most likely be in the form of rental apartments. And as Mary indicated, we have a bonus density application. There's 205 standard density units associated with the application. And then the bonus density provision would allow up to 47 additional units for a total of 252 units. The property, many of you are probably familiar with the site. You drive by it often. It's in the northeast quadrant of Bonita Beach Road and I-75. Access to the site is a road called Miller Road. There's also Orr Road back there. Most of you have probably been around long enough to know those two terms. So access would be at the Orr Miller Road access point. And the property is designated interchange commercial, and as Mary indicated, it allows a variety of commercial industrial uses, but it also allows multifamily residential standard density, 10 units per acre, up to 15 units an acre with bonus densities. So the total project is just under 21 acres, and as we indicated, this is considered a major amendment because of the nature of the rezoning, although I think from our standpoint, it's pretty logical change. It's a significant reduction in traffic. We've had 2 neighborhood informational meetings, and we've had limited participation. I noticed that one of the neighbors is in attendance today. We've had interest from the adjoining CPD to our east, but so far we've heard no objection related to our project and hope that we can all agree with staff's recommendations. The approved master plan looks like this. This is all commercial, so this is commercial heavy on out parcels, and then the access points located right there. We're proposing to make a modification so that the residential component is largely in the center of the site, commercial components right at the corner of Bonita Beach Road and Miller Road, and then we continue to have preserved floodplain compensation area and open spaces at our northern perimeter. It's a prettier picture of what it's more likely to look like when we insert buildings and parking and things like that in it. So again, just for everybody's reference, this is Miller Road right here, and it intersects here. Orr Road currently extends along this way. We had vacated it previously to go through the shopping center, if you will, and that created an advantage for traffic because this intersection is too close to Bonita Beach Road to function properly. So Orr Road was relocated, and we will again, through an easement agreement modification, we will be recreating, sorry about that. We'll be recreating Orr Road to go extend to Miller Road across, then south, and that will reconnect to Orr Road. Our only access point on Orr Road will be for likely an emergency access point somewhere in the vicinity of here for fire and emergency services, but otherwise we'll be creating Orr Road and Miller Road to meet your complete street standards, and they'll have sidewalks, et cetera, and be improved to those. So on the site, we have facing Miller Road, this would be a leasing office clubhouse facility, swimming pool concept, buildings arranged largely around either that or the preservation areas on the site. These buildings that are depicted in this area, they're in the industry, they're called townhomes. They're not truly townhouses. They're more horizontal living, if you will. I don't know if you're familiar with that term in the rental market, but you don't have another unit above you. You would control the 1 and 2 stories yourselves, and you wouldn't have anybody above you in that situation. I don't know if that's really going to get built there. It may be more of a conventional building, but that's how we've depicted it on this plan. Highlights of the plan obviously will be this area. We had Kiel Canal and Imperial River flow to our north. So this area is encumbered with floodplain and also floodways, they're called. We've already accounted for that and have gone through the process to modify those lines. So our development envelope is well established through FEMA to be in the area where we've depicted the buildings. We are going to be required to do some maintenance in these areas that are labeled floodplain. Those will be scraped down largely about a foot, and then they'll be revegetated. And that's part of the floodplain compensation to actually put fill material on the improved parts of the site.
May I ask you a question, Mr.
Of course.
Arnold?
Yes, sir.
If you get permission for the additional units, will you build up?
We're proposing, this site plan depicts 252
Oh, it
units.
does?
It does, yes, sir.
I didn't know.
And these are proposed, I wasn't going to go through all the details of our development standards, but we've created, obviously, a schedule of uses that are consistent with your Bonita Beach Road overlay. And then the residential uses are permitted in the residential tract. And then we created development standards for both the CPD area as well as the RPD area. And this allows for us to have a maximum height of 60 feet, which would allow 4-story apartment buildings to be constructed. Pretty consistent with other apartment complexes that have been built in the area. We've asked for several deviations. Some of those were previously approved, and we've modified those. We and staff are in agreement with those, except they have recommended denial of deviation that we asked for signage. And we had asked for signage to be located in an area that would be visible. Oops, I don't know why my trigger happy there. The area would have allowed some signage in this location as well as the entrance over here. And that would have been visible from Bonita Beach Road, we thought, for travelers to the east to be able to see the signage. Staff has recommended denial of that largely, I don't want to put words in Mary's mouth, but largely because it was depicted originally as a pole sign and up to 15 feet high. And I think that as in conversations with staff about their recommendation, I think had we been able to depict something that's more of a wall sign or a ground sign that was closer to 8 feet in height, they would have been supportive of our deviation. So I would like to think that our dialogue is still open through City Council to give us time to design a sign structure to show them and see if council can support a deviation to allow us to have an additional sign that might be visible from Bonita Beach Road. I think staff originally in their mind thought that it was only going to be visible from the on-ramp, which it would be visible from the on-ramp to I-75, but our intent was to get something visible from Bonita Beach Road heading east. So we'll be working on that with staff. We are largely in agreement with staff recommendations. This depicts where some of those deviations, some of those are related to, for instance, up here next to the FDOT lake, we've asked for a setback reduction for our excavation. Even though that excavation is only going to be a foot or two deep, your code still requires a 50-foot setback. So we've asked for a reduction so we can go in and manage the floodplain area properly. So these are some conceptual renderings that Madison Capital Group's been working on for the project. These depict 4-story apartment buildings. Color scheme and architectural style are still yet to be finally determined, but these are, I would call them more the Florida modern style that we've seen in other locations. This depicts sort of a clubhouse, probably resort style pool. There'll be dog park, typical amenities, indoor workout room, et cetera. Traffic analysis. I'm going to let Ted Treesh come up and spend just a couple minutes talking to you about traffic. There's a couple of conditions in there that we probably don't love really related to traffic. One of those being a recommendation that we install a physical barrier to prohibit left turns, which we don't think is necessary because it's our understanding that Lee DOT is actually closing that intersection at Hunter's Ridge. So we would not have any other opportunity but to turn right out of the project. So there's no reason to put a physical barrier to prohibit a left turn move. But I'm going to let Ted address that. And then when he finishes, I'm going to go through just a couple of other points in the staff report, and then we'll be happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Wayne. Ted Treesh with TR Transportation. Just a couple of quick points on the traffic study. As Wayne indicated, this is a significant reduction from what's currently approved in terms of the amount of trips that this project could generate when we swap out the large amount of retail with the multifamily use. As you can see, there's quite a bit of reduction in the AM and PM peak hour as well as daily trip generation from this project as a result of this amendment to the zoning. Also, with the relocation of the Ore Road, as Wayne indicated, we're going to create a safer situation at that intersection with Bonita Beach Road by relocating Ore Road a little further north to create more of a distance separation from Bonita Beach Road. Our analysis showed that Bonita Beach Road will still operate at an acceptable level of service at the build out of this project. The only condition in the staff report that we were looking at that we had an issue with was condition 8 under access. 8A indicates the installation of a raised island at the intersection of Bonita Beach Road and Miller Road. And again, Bonita Beach Road is a county road, so we'd have to get Lee County DOT to approve that. But Lee County DOT does have plans already prepared to close the median opening at Hunters Ridge Road. If you're aware, there is a median opening at that location. They're going to close that median opening entirely. So both roads on either side, Hunters Ridge Boulevard on the south and Miller Road or Road on the north, will be right-in, right-out movements only.
Do we know when that's going to happen?
At this time, Lee DOT hasn't indicated when they intend to install that, but the plans have been prepared.
And when do y'all intend to start construction?
I'll have to let some other team members indicate that. So with that median closure, that pork chop island really becomes unnecessary. That's really the only comments I had, and any questions? Yes.
There's a major project on Bonita Beach Road just to the east of your project. That includes a whole bunch of commercial development and a residential development. Now, are those numbers, and I ask this every time we have a meeting like this, are those numbers included in your traffic projections?
We don't specifically take into account other projects, but what we do take into account is a growth in traffic due to other projects. So consistent with the guidelines and the traffic studies that conducted in the city and reviewing with your staff, we look at vested trips on Bonita Beach Road as well as increase in background growth due to historical growth trends. So that accounts for future projects that are going to be developed that are going to add traffic. But we don't specifically look at a project specific because we don't know exactly when that project's going to be developed and how long it'll take for that project to be developed.
You had some numbers on figure 2A on page 44. This is weekday AM project trips, weekday PM project trips, reassignment of site trips with Hunters Ridge Boulevard median opening close. You had 89 cars coming out of Miller Road in the morning and 87 cars coming out in weekday PM. That's 89 cars and 87 cars. Is that reflective of the 252 units?
Yes.
What is the general, the Traffic Institute's generation numbers for an apartment unit?
A multifamily unit typically generates around 0.5 to 0.55 trips per unit during the peak hour. A single family unit generates closer to 1 trip per unit during the PM peak hour. A multifamily unit is about half.
What I've always used is for a single family house is 10 trips per day, not AM or PM peak, just 10 trips per day. That's 5 out, 5 in.
Multifamily is about 5.5.
5.5 trips per day.
And when you think about it, there's less persons per household in a multifamily unit. Typically, there's less kids with vehicles, teenagers with vehicles in multifamily units. There may be, more single vehicle users per multifamily unit. So your trip duration for a multifamily unit is lower.
Okay, the reason I bring this up is I was a little bit late this morning because I got caught in the typical traffic jam right at 75 and Bonita Beach Road this morning.
Well, there was a wreck on 75 that's backed up for 8 miles.
That didn't have anything to do with.
Yeah, it's messing everything. I got stuck in it too.
I've got a couple questions. Thank you, Bruce. So full disclosure, I went and sat on the property yesterday while I read through everything. Let's suppose I'm traveling eastbound on Bonita Beach Road with my phone turned off. And the island is there. The Lee County Department of Transportation has installed the island. The project is fully up and running. Commercial spaces built out and occupied. I'm heading east on Bonita Beach Road. How do I get in?
Does it go that far east?
This would be nice if we had a satellite view, audio-visual community, or committee.
So you would travel east past the Miller Road, Hunters Ridge intersection to basically what Tradeway 1 is the next intersection, in front of the City Mattress Building.
Very
There's
familiar
a
with
left turn lane, and you would complete a U-turn movement, and then come back west and complete a right turn lane.
So are there any plans to increase the size of that length of that left turn lane? I'm speaking to stacking now.
We have looked at that. Staff has asked us to look at that analysis. That'll be something that Lee County as well will look at when they complete their median closure to see if any additional turn lane extensions need to be done as a result of that median closure.
And when do those studies get done?
Yeah, you'd have to ask the county for that. They're the ones closing the median opening.
So we're looking at, do you think, are they required? Maybe these are all staff questions. Is there a study required, or do we have to wait and see that there's a problem before a study is initiated?
Yeah, there's a condition in the staff report that we have to do that analysis to look at that turn lane to see if it needs to be extended. Now, if the county does it or not, that's something you'll need to ask your staff or perhaps Lee County DOT.
All right, so now I'm exiting the property. The island is, the new island is in place, so I can only turn right. Where's my next opportunity to turn around and head east on Bonita Beach Road?
You could do a U-turn at the I-75 ramp, the southbound interchange entrance ramp.
Wait,
You're allowed to do a U-turn at that intersection.
southbound okay,
Or you could proceed to the next signal, which is
that's like where McDonald's is,
where the McDonald's and the gas stations are, and complete a U-turn at that movement.
and it'll be up to a later on study to determine if those left turn lanes, which are going to be, in our case, U-turn lanes, are sufficiently long enough for the new stacking.
Those left turn lanes are fairly long in those directions. In the westbound movements, those left turn lanes, and they're built to the length, the maximum length right now that they can be, if you've been out there.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else for traffic?
No traffic.
Thank you.
Yeah, one point, I believe you said at some point in your traffic study that the left turn lane at the Publix, the Tradeway 1, would have to be lengthened.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, our analysis showed, the initial analysis we did, I believe, last week showed it would have to be approximately 90 feet longer.
Okay, and you suggested that this project be a participant,
A proportionate share.
proportionate share of doing, and who else is gonna be asked to improve that?
Well, that would be up to the city to determine, but it would be the county and the city and anybody else that's adding the movements to those U-turns.
Okay.
Thanks, Ted. And I guess just to reaffirm, a significant reduction in those peak hour trips associated with getting rid of much of that retail. So a couple points I just wanted to make in the staff report, if I might. And I think staff's in agreement with this. There is under condition 2C, and that's on page 5 of my staff report under your recommendations. Item 2C talks about the dwelling units and the bonus density units. And there's also a condition at the end of that that says the dwelling unit mix is limited to a maximum of 50% one-bedroom units, 40% two-bedroom units, and 10% three-bedroom units. And I would recommend that that language be stricken in that location because it is tied to and associated with the deviation on parking that staff recommends and carries that same language forward. Because if we try to utilize the parking deviation, then we agree there should be the limitation because that's what we based our analysis on. But as a general condition for the PD, we don't believe it needs to be in that location. And I think staff will concur with that. Next condition on item 7C, that's on page 8. This one's under transportation, and it refers to the multimodal facilities, et cetera. But it seems to be language out of the land development code. It just seems like a redundant condition, doesn't need to be there.
Sorry, where are you?
I am on page 8, item 7C, paragraph 7C, under transportation and multimodal. It talks about that all the required multimodal facilities, infrastructure, crossings, amenities, et cetera, are provided. Those are part of your overlay and also part of the land development code. I'm not sure that it needs to be there. And then item 8C, Mr. Treesh discussed that about the raised barrier. And then I discussed previously the deviation item related to deviation 3, our signage, and I would like the opportunity to continue dialogue with staff on that. They've recommended denial of what we had requested, and we have not had an opportunity to try to redesign a sign that would be acceptable to staff, so we'd like to continue to work on that. But with that, that's my presentation. Be happy to answer any more questions.
Mr. Arnold, I have a question,
Yes, sir.
and I'm a little confused. Deviation 2,
Yes, sir.
which is an approval and a denial. I'm at a loss because my copy of the Land Development Code did not contain this particular section to which this refers. Can you please tell me what you wanted to do in deviation 2?
Yeah, so staff has a recommendation of approval for a portion of that, because
Right.
under your overlay standards, this is the Bonita Beach Road overlay standard that was adopted. It talks about things having blocks and block lengths and access point limitations, and our only access on Bonita Beach Road is, get the pointer down there, is that location.
Okay.
There's really no opportunity to create the block lengths, and staff has acknowledged that the setbacks and things of that nature. They've requested denial of the other parts of it because they believe we can work through those because they're not tied to such a specific standard. So some of those standards, we went through them, and I identified that most of those really may not even be applicable. And if we agree they're not applicable, then they're not applicable. But there's a long, long list of things in the code, and I don't have a copy of that in front of me, but I'm sure I have it in my packet and can go through some of those specifically if you'd like. But we were content with staff's recommendation.
So you're okay with what they
Yes.
did? Oh, okay, well then, fine, thank you.
Okay.
All right, all right. Any other questions for the applicant?
Does the applicant own the property now?
They are under contract to purchase.
And what are the terms of that contract? Not, like, we got to get through this before,
I don't think it's tied to a favorable recommendation. I think it's date specific, and it comes up sometime later this month.
is it tied to city council action?
You know, Neil? I don't know specifically if it is.
I believe that it is, yes.
Believe that it is. So the city council has got to act before the date runs out, before the clock runs out?
I think, yes.
That's standard.
Well, we have the applicant on the phone. If Mr. Blakely wants to weigh in and answer your question specifically, I'm sure he knows the terms of that contract.
Yeah, good morning. This is Todd Blakely with Madison Capital. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, sir. So I'm just trying to understand the reasoning behind your question here, sir.
No, the question is basically, is the purchase of the property subject to either the zoning board approval or the city council approval? That's the question, and whether it's relevant, I don't know.
At this point, we've basically waived our rights to that because given the limited time that we had in the contract. So is it important for us to get this? Absolutely. We're excited about this project. We're an existing stakeholder in the city of Bonita Springs and looking to add to that down here. So yes, this is an important decision for us to be able to move forward with our project.
Thank you.
Okay, makes sense.
Thank you.
And good summary, Tony. Thank you.
Yeah, you quote comprehensive plan policy 1.1.15 often in your write-up. And this project is located in the interchange commercial future land use category, which is intended for uses that serve the traveling public, and a whole long list of uses that would serve the traveling public. And at the end, it says, and multifamily residential. We have a certain amount of land that would, naturally fall into an interchange, what do they call it? Interchange commercial future. We only have so many interchanges as they go through town. Limited acreage. What you're asking us to do is to basically get rid of that characterization of this property as an interchange commercial and zone it for apartments. It's not even mixed use anymore. It's just apartments now with a little tiny, that parcel maybe holds 2 McDonald's, maybe 2 McDonald's. So we're leaving completely the interchange idea that's in the comprehensive plan and moving toward apartments. It's totally apartments. Now, you're telling us that the market is dictating that?
Yes, sir. The market is definitely dictating the fact that there's huge demand for residential and more so than the retail industry today. And as you heard Mr. Treese say, once the median is closed at that location, it's less desirable for retailers to be at that location. And I just want to reaffirm, and I think staff would agree, that multifamily is given the same weight in the interchange commercial designation as any other use. It is a permitted use under your future land use element.
I would disagree with it. It's given the same weight. To me, it's an add-on. The intent of this zoning is to serve the traveling public with commercial uses. An apartment's not a commercial use and in no way serves the traveling public. So I think it's an add-on. But what you're asking us to do is give up property that the plan says should be used for one purpose. That's its intent, and rezone that to apartments. And that's the basic question in front of us today. I mean, all the deviations can be dealt with, but the basic question is you're asking us to give up land that the intent of the plan is for it to serve the traveling public, and that vanishes now.
I'd like to raise, excuse me, if I may raise a point of order. If it is, permitted, I don't think we should get into this.
It has a right to it.
Exactly. So I don't know if we need legal opinion on this, but it seems to me it's an interesting discussion, but it has nothing to do with what is before us, in my opinion, because if it is okay to do it, if it's permitted, then I think the other opinions, although valid to an individual, I don't think apply to this particular application.
It's permitted in the policy. It's not permitted in the zoning. We're being asked to change the zoning. It is not permitted in the current zoning.
Okay, so but what's your objection specifically?
I don't have an objection. I would just ask this group to consider what we're giving up to meet what I consider as a planner, long-range planner, valuable acreage that is meant to serve the traveling public, taking that out of the stock of land we have available, it's 300-something acres, and putting that into an apartment category.
You would put mini malls in there, or McDonald's or Wendy's.
I haven't looked at it from a
something like
design,
that,
from a
rather
design point of
than
view.
apartments. So you would want that all commercial. That's what you're saying.
The zoning, and to me, the intent of the comprehensive plan says it should be commercial for the traveling public.
My
That's what it
recommendation,
says.
I don't think that any of this conversation is irrelevant. I would just wait till possibly after the staff presentation and you're in your final deliberations unless there's specific questions of the applicant. I think I would hold the debate on the item until.
No, I think that's right.
Can I plant the seed?
I think that's,
Well, I think you have.
okay, anything else?
No, sir.
One more question. What about noise? This site is right next to 75, and it is one noisy place to live. Are you going to do something with the what I call stumpies?
Excuse me, Bruce, that's a question for marketing, question for real estate people. It's not our remit to even consider that. So I would say that's an irrelevant question.
I disagree again.
Well, you can disagree, but I mean, I don't think we should spend our time trying to decide whether or not a person is going to buy or lease a premises because of noise. That is not our concern. Sorry. Please proceed, Mr. Arnold.
I'm finished with my presentation. Happy to answer any other questions or let staff proceed with theirs.
Mary?
I can switch it. Is Brent on? Is Brent on? Okay. You can. Okay, good morning again, Mary Zizzo. The applicant did explain much, but I will add a few details here and there. I do want to point out on the phone, we have many of our reviewers here, but on the phone we also have Tom Ross, our transportation reviewer, and Brent Spain, our counsel for this matter. So, as previously mentioned, this is an existing approved commercial plan development. The way our code reads is that in the interchange commercial area, if residential is requested, a rezone is required. So this request is to rezone from the existing commercial plan development to the new commercial and residential plan development, which means a new schedule of uses, new development regulations, new master concept plan, and new deviation requests. So we're familiar with the area that we've been discussing. That current commercial plan development, as already mentioned, currently allows for multiple fast food restaurants and a large amount of commercial space. The comprehensive plan does allow for commercial uses as well as multifamily residential uses. So we do find the request appropriate and consistent with the comprehensive plan as far as the interchange commercial area. Zoning considerations, yes, it is an existing commercial plan development. The location is also within the Bonita Beach Road corridor overlay, so new plan development should be consistent with that overlay unless the deviation is approved. The uses that are requested for both of the RPD and CPD sections, we do find to be generally consistent with residential and commercial developments. If dwelling units are permitted in the CPD area, they can only be ancillary to commercial, so there must be a principal commercial use at that location. And a fast food restaurant is still a requested use for the commercial location, not to exceed 10,000 square feet. So it is a significant reduction of what is currently allowed there for commercial square footage. So as mentioned, we do address the density bonus units at this point because we believe it does go towards the recommendation of adequate infrastructure and the comprehensive plan consistency. I do have Tom on the phone who can explain it later when we discuss traffic, but the items that we were to address in 1.15.B4 are for the most part addressed and we find them to be appropriate. But the item that we were locked up on a bit was the existing and committed public facilities are not so overwhelmed that a density increase would be contrary to the overall public interest. And as I mentioned in my staff report, there's information that we have requested that we have not received, and therefore at this time we cannot recommend approval of the bonus density units because we don't know the effects on the existing and committed public facilities, the roadway networks. So we've seen the master concept plan showing that the majority of this 20.99 acres is used for residential and open space in this request, and then there's a small portion of commercial right at the intersection near Bonita Beach Road and Miller. The requested development regulations are, we were in agreement with them. We did tweak a few just to make them more generally consistent with the Bonita Beach Road overlay, which they do seem to be in agreement with. And then the deviations, there were 6 deviations requested, and we did thoroughly go through each of them. So we did agree with the excavation for that floodplain compensation area. They will have to go through an administrative action to get that actually approved in the future. The Bonita Beach Road corridor deviation request, like I said, this is a major area in Bonita Springs. We've worked very long and hard to come up with these regulations for that area. And so we do feel that they should make every best effort to comply. I think they're willing to do so. There are certain portions that they cannot comply with based on their design and based on the site itself. And so we did approve those deviations were applicable, but what we would like to see are those streetscape amenities. Complete streets will apply either way, but to be more generally consistent with the setbacks for that area as well, and parking layouts. And like I said, they are willing to do so, it sounds like. Deviation 3 regarding the signage. We are willing to have that conversation with them and try to come up with an idea of what can work there. I do understand their intent more thoroughly now to get more visibility, and visibility is important for safety as well. But the request, as it was originally presented, seemed to be a bit extra compared to what around there has, and it did not seem to contribute to what it needed to do. So we would entertain the conversation to maybe have a smaller request for that deviation and to be more consistent with our current zoning or sign code. But those are the locations for the proposed signs near the on-ramp and then at Bonita Beach Road and Miller Road. And these are present day conditions to get a better idea of the area. Deviation 4, we did recommend approval of to reduce the buffer for the area adjacent to Orr Road and the egress and utility easement area to reduce the landscape buffer to 10 feet. And we are okay with that. And those are the areas where they are requesting that. Deviation 5 for complete streets. Complete streets is very important to us, as you are aware. So we do agree with the sections that they are proposing to deviate from because of the current conditions out there. And I tried to show it a little bit better here based on their cross sections that they submitted. But they will be complying in this area and along Miller Road. They will improve up to their point of access. The part that they want to deviate from and not improve at all would be this portion of Orr Road that will be relocated to there. We are okay with that, provided that if they do turn the emergency access into an actual access point for the residents, they should bring it up to complete street standards with closed drainage and sidewalks.
Say that again, please.
Yes. If they do choose, so they show an emergency vehicle access point on their master concept plan, and the point of access to there at this point is the deviation they're seeking. So they do not want to improve that road to meet our complete street standards in that portion, that segment. If they change the emergency access to be an actual access point for their project, then they should be improving that road to our current standards, just as any other street would be required to do.
At some point, does Orr Road turn from a, what are we calling it, county road to a privately maintained road? There's a definite line where it looks like it changes. Our resident?
All private above?
I'm off of Miller. I don't go down Orr very often.
Okay. I mean, it clearly changes. Construction, marking.
I believe it does. Go ahead.
The proper, excuse me, Jay Sweet with Community Development, the proper answer, it has to be determined. And the reason is that there is a vacation agreement that Orr Road gets vacated and relocated. That whole agreement has to be reworked as part of that. That was something that happened in the previous plan. Everybody seems to be in agreement with it. But when you did that, technically Orr Road is vacated even though it exists. And they were supposed to be removed as soon as the relocated ore from the previous site plan was built. The relocated ore was going to be privately maintained from that plan. We really need to have a discussion as to who's going to maintain. I think from a staff perspective, if they're maintaining a portion of it, they should maintain all of it. I think their argument will be, we're not using it, so why do we have to maintain it? I think that's the reason I'm going to say it's to be determined. But we need to have that agreement because they need to vacate and assign those easements if this gets approved. And so that'll be discussion at that time.
And you are,
Yeah. Okay.
and sir,
So the
you are-
attorney's been working on it, so that's fine.
you are Jay with the city?
Yes.
Jay?
I'm the city surveyor, and I'm also an AICP planner.
So Orr Road was vacated by the county to whom now?
Orr Road was vacated through a process when the original site plan, in other words, we keep going back to that site plan that had all the commercial, and Orr was going to be relocated through the project. There was a document that vacated Orr, but the vacation became effective when the new Orr was built. Obviously, that didn't happen. That document has to be modified. I just heard from both the attorneys that they're working on how to modify that document, but it would have been a private road interior-wise, and so the demarcation that you're talking about sort of is a natural demarcation where it would have changed. Now that it's not going to change, that's something that I don't think we have the exact answer for. I think it has to be determined.
So, I mean, I don't know that this is all that particularly relevant to this project, but what has to happen is the mechanics of Orr Road have to be addressed. So it was previously proposed to be vacated and relocated. The vacation resolution states that it would become, the vacation becomes effective when the new road is constructed and essentially rededicated as an easement. That road never got reconstructed, so the question is whether a new agreement needs to be established, or do you vacate the vacation because it was never completed? So that, it's just technical. The issue is the road is gonna stay where it is.
Yeah,
And as it is.
No, it's going to be upgraded to a complete street.
Well, and this is part of the whole thing that's in it right now, is that currently the vacated agreement vacated a wider right-of-way for Orr than we're getting back as part of this. It's like 5 feet difference, but there's a difference. And so there's a lot of different things that are moving here, and it's just a matter of figuring out. I don't think anybody is opposed to what they're trying to do. I think the land is there, but there's a series of T's to be crossed and I's to be dotted, because the agreement that they had previously was as soon as this happens, this goes into effect. This isn't going to happen now in totality, of only in a portion. That's the reason the attorneys, make the big bucks to figure out how to make that happen. Now, if I've confused you enough, I've done my job.
Derek, you said we're going to improve, can you repeat your last sentence?
Well, no,
We're going to improve the road, sidewalks, increase the right-of-way.
Correct.
Up to a certain point.
Correct. That's the issue that Mary Zizza was raising. There's a portion of it which is set aside currently just for emergency access, and the condition would be that if it ever becomes actual access or alternative access, that also has to be brought up to standard.
So what we're talking about here is addressing it just up to the northern boundary of the property. I'm looking at, well, I don't know what I'm, and what happens to Orr Road after that?
Yeah, it remains as is. I think it serves 3 homes?
I think there are 3 homes back there, plus that DOT pond.
Yeah, plus the DOT pond.
And whose road is that?
I believe, and I might be totally wrong on this, is that there was a break point where it was county maintained versus not county maintained before it got turned over to the city.
There are multiple facets to whether a road, who it belongs to, who is obligated to maintain it. They're all different issues. So it was originally dedicated as a public right-of-way. Whether it was maintained by the county or the city is irrelevant for the purposes of the original vacation. What has to occur now is that there will be essentially a revacation to the corrected right-of-way with a easement agreement or some other condition to say whether it's dedicated, whether it's privately owned but publicly accessible. These will be all the conditions that get laid out. It is, what is being discussed currently is whether the city has the right but not the obligation to maintain it, or whether the applicant who is maintaining a portion of O Road will be responsible for maintaining all of it. Those are additional issues that are being worked out.
Those will be determined,
Those will be determined primarily through the development order process.
which process?
Through the development order process.
Okay, that's right. That's not for us to make that determination.
Yeah.
Thank you
you're-
very much.
That's at the 200-foot resolution. You're at the
Understood.
1,000-foot resolution.
I understand.
Okay, and then the last the last deviation was for a parking reduction. We do agree with the applicant that we can tie the mix of units to this deviation, so they are not bound to have 50% of one-bedrooms if they do not actually try to utilize this deviation. And we did require that they have an additional 5 spaces for their leasing office, to make sure that there's enough parking for that as well. I do have Tom Ross on the phone, our traffic engineer, who I would like to explain this portion. Tom, are you there?
Yes, good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, good morning. This is Tom Ross. I'm the traffic engineer for community development. I think this issue has been covered fairly well by the applicant in some of the discussion that's gone on so far this morning, but I just wanted to reiterate a couple of points. So the county has indicated that they will be closing the median opening at Miller Road and Bonita Beach Road, although we don't know exactly when that will occur. So when that happens, any traffic that uses that opening for a left turn will basically have to, the traffic that's heading eastbound on Bonita Beach Road or coming north on Horizon or on Hunters Ridge Boulevard, which is the connecting road to the south, will have to head further east to Tradeway 1 and take a U-turn at that location. And there is currently a left turn lane there. The concern is we don't know ultimately how much traffic that will be until the development south of Bonita Beach Road gets built out. And we don't know what those conditions will be until that median opening gets closed. So what we've asked for is for the applicant to do a detailed analysis at the time of DO to address that issue and determine what additional improvements will need to be made at Tradeway 1 at the left turn lane there to accommodate that. Now, as the applicant pointed out earlier, it's not all of their traffic. There is existing traffic that uses that left turn for City Mattress, for the traffic coming up from Hunters Ridge Boulevard, and the future development at Horizon Park. So it will be a proportionate share of those improvements, whatever is needed. So that'll be determined to that point. Now, it's important to keep in mind that although that creates that additional issue, this is a good thing to have the median opening closed, because as it is today, it's not an entirely safe condition. There is no place for cars to stack other than the limited space within the median opening itself. There's no left turn lane and there's no opportunity to build one. So that closure will help improve operations and safety at that intersection. So that's a good thing. The other thing to keep in mind is that while this project will add traffic to that left turn down at Tradeway 1 ultimately, it will be certainly a lot less than what they're already approved for with the commercial development zoning. So this would be a benefit from that standpoint. As Mary pointed out regarding the housing bonus density, she's correct, we cannot determine what that impact will be at this time because that analysis has not been done. And so until we get that analysis, we won't know the full picture of what that impact will be. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We were asked earlier about what that road network does look like. This is the plan from Bonita Beach Road at this point, from Lee County at this point, that Tradeway 1 will be a U-turn for those trying to enter the site. Environmentally, there were no concerns with this. The Tree Advisory Board did review the project. They did require that the project will come back to them for review again, and they did make conditions that require either retaining trees or replanting trees for that. We're all familiar with the plan development review criteria. It's outlined and analyzed in attachment A of your staff report. And the conditions. The conditions have already been addressed for the most part. The master concept plan will be attached to this approval. The schedule of uses is included in that master concept plan. We are willing to take out the dwelling unit mix attached in that condition. It will only be required if the deviation is utilized. The development regulations are generally consistent with the Bonita Beach Road setbacks that we presented. The parking deviation is in there if it's chosen to be used. The environmental conditions that we previously discussed. There are landscaping conditions to provide for enhanced buffers. The transportation multimodal conditions we outlined in there, as well as intersection studies that will be required. We do agree with the applicant for number 8 that if the median is closed already, then that raised island will not be required. But we do not know the timing of Lee County's plans at this point. So if they choose to develop first, then they will need to put in that raised island to prevent any left turns out of the site and only allow for a right turn in.
Let me ask real quick, just because we're getting to a point where we're getting, the staff and the applicant are kind of narrowing down the conditions, and at the end of the day, you're gonna make a recommendation to approve or deny or approve with conditions. I want to make sure we are all working from the same conditions. So is the condition that the raised island is only necessary at the time of development if the median hasn't been closed acceptable to the applicant?
No, I think our position is it's not required because the county is gonna close it. You know, I've had conversations with Rob Price, I know John's had conversations with Rob Price, as has Ted. He tells me it's imminent, but I don't know what imminent is in county time. But it seems like an unnecessary impediment in the access road if the county's gonna close it in the very near future.
Well, can we come up with a term of how soon it would be closed? I mean, if they say it'll be done when they do improvements on Bonita Beach Road in 3 years, that's long enough, I think, to make the conditions addressed.
I thought it was gonna be within the next 6 months to a year. I'm not sure about that, Mike.
Okay.
Derek, does it become a real issue? I mean, when is this development supposed to be completed? 2, 3, 4 years from now?
I don't know, that's an applicant question.
Right, and I mean, so it would seem to me that the closing will have to be done at one point before the development is complete.
I think when this all plays out, you're probably exactly right. I think that this is going to be far enough out that the county will have made a change. The reason why there's any concern on our part is the fact that the county's been making statements that they're going to close this median opening for years. There was even something in writing saying it was supposed to be done within a handful of months. Those months have come and gone. So because the issue still lays out there and has not been solved, that's why this condition has been proposed.
But now they have an added incentive, because there's going to be a development and a rationale for closing it is stronger than it had been in the past.
I would agree.
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me.
But the lack of action leaves a question open. That's the statement. But I agree with what I think that you see is going to play out.
Do we know if funding is in place for this improvement?
I don't think that there's a question of funding. It's not a very expansive improvement. It basically is a curbing and
Nothing gets done
hands-off.
unless there's funding that's budgeted.
According to DOT, they did have the money. They had done the plans in-house, and they were ready to begin construction. Why there has not been equipment brought to the site and why this work has not been done yet, I don't know.
It's government.
Don't go away, don't go away. Is this a possible scenario that the state's been talking about closing this median. I heard you say for years and years and years. We don't have a date when it's going to, no firm date. We think it may happen within months. It may happen within years and years and years. Is it possible that the county will come back and say, hey, city, you created this stacking problem or whatever. It's up to you to now do those improvements on Bonita Beach Road?
Well, that's possible, and I think that you started to uncover a little bit of the multiple levels of jurisdiction on this section of roadway. You have the State Department of Transportation controlling the intersection, you have the County Department of Transportation controlling the roadway, and you have the city providing land use decisions on either side of that right-of-way. As a result, you have multiple governments all getting together in lockstep in a perfect agreement, which I'm sure this will all turn out fine.
But the question is will the applicant accept the condition that if it doesn't get out fine, that they'll put the thing in? That's the question. It's a yes or a no question.
Yeah, this is Todd Blakely with Madison
If
Capital.
you're so confident it's gonna happen, you'll accept the risk.
Can the board hear me?
Yes. Sorry.
So yeah, this is Todd Blakely with Madison Capital. You know, we would prefer not to agree to any sort of, pork chop improvement right there. I would have no problem if we were to put signage up there indicating that that is a right out only. So no left turn. I have no problem putting signage up there so that pedestrians and vehicles can see that.
Look, I would propose that this issue be resolved when and if the time is right. Once this program begins to get underway and construction begins, then we can take a look at it again and see what kind of an issue the left-hand turn would create. I mean, it is premature at this point in time to spend all this time trying to decide something that will not have to be decided for 3 or 4 years. I'm sorry.
I agree.
That's just my opinion. And let's wait until the project moves along, and then we can discuss whether you're going to close that road with a sign or a fence or whatever. I think that in order to save time, this discussion should be closed right now.
Is there a condition that would be, that everyone could agree to that addresses the issue at DO? Because
I'm good with that.
It just seems that you might have a little more perspective at that time.
What's DL?
Development order. That's when.
The DO.
Yeah, development order is what DO means.
Yeah, I would say that this issue should be addressed, again, at the development order, which again may be premature, and we'll have to postpone it again until something happens.
The current condition reads, 8A, at the time of local development order, the applicant shall install a raised island at the intersection of Beach Road. If the condition was to be revised to say, at the time of local development order, the applicant may be required to install a raised island at the intersection or provide other interim traffic control efforts.
And the question is the determination by the county to close it? And will that be determined at the time of the development order? If not, then I think it should be a condition ongoing, until it's resolved one way or the other, until the county says yes or the county says no. If the county says no, then the applicant will have to put he'll have to put the island there.
The reason I say other improvement is because the condition may be so that the applicant's project is moving along slightly faster than the county's improvements, and there may be required to put bollards or some other temporary item rather than spend the expense of putting in a concrete pork chop.
Right.
That could address it, but that should be something that I think to delegate to staff to address with the applicant at that time.
We agree with that, and the applicant does as well.
Okay.
You will agree with that, Mary?
Mark that up.
Okay.
Okay, finishing up our standard conditions that any other applicable rules, laws, or ordinances will be required to be complied with at that time, and that this is not a guarantee of future approvals. Do we have any further questions for myself or Tom or Brent on the line? Or any of our reviewers here as well?
Anything?
You addressed parking, Mary?
Yes,
You addressed parking?
yes.
And it's this, the applicant, Todd, wants to do 1.8 parking spaces per unit.
Correct.
And that's a reduction in what the city,
It would be a reduction because we require a set amount and then we require 10% of guest spaces. So because we limited the mix of units, we actually don't find that to be too much of a reduction. It would be appropriate what they're asking for if they did the 50% one bedroom, 40% two bedroom, 10% three bedroom.
Both sides have agreed.
Yes.
Okay, issues resolved. Anything else?
Well, just to follow up on deviation 3, how are you resolving the sign? I heard you're gonna talk about it? Is that how you're gonna resolve it? What if those talks don't end well?
Then we will maintain our position at time of city council.
That condition in the motion.
would you back up to your page 9? Please, density bonus units.
Slide 9? I'm sorry.
Page 9 of your presentation. We're on page,
The density bonus units?
That's it.
Gary?
yep,
Okay.
bullet C, third bullet. Existing and committed public facilities are not so overwhelmed that a density increase would be contrary to the overall public interest. Cannot be determined at this time. Would you expand on that? Wouldn't we normally have an answer to this for this to appear before this board?
No, Gary, because this is something.
I'm asking her, Tony.
Please.
Please.
Listen to me for a minute. Will you please?
No, sir. We are here to learn about this project, and I'm asking the staff a question.
But the question has been asked and answered.
I've asked it. I haven't received the answer.
You haven't read, never mind. Go, just go. Just go.
We requested additional traffic information on the impacts to the existing and the public facility, and the committed facilities at this point. We have not received an adequate analysis, in Tom's opinion, that we can feel comfortable recommending approval of those bonus density units at this time. The applicant is aware of that. They are trying to work with us, but at the time of this report, we did not receive adequate information to recommend approval of those units.
They're going
So
to
we don't,
present
we
something
don't,
else to
we
go
don't
on.
know if the bonus density has been approved yet.
The bonus
That's gonna be
density,
at staff level,
the bonus density will have to be approved at city council.
at city council
And so
level.
that agreement is still being worked on. They're still trying to give us what we need to feel comfortable with it, and then we will present at city council how we feel is appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
That was already determined. All right. Anything else? Okay, now we have time for public comment. Anyone would like to make comments from the public, please? No comments? Okay. Then I guess at this point, the next, we should hear a case update on Soltura at East Ferry.
We need a motion on
No, you need a
Oh,
motion.
oh, you need a motion first, before that.
Is there any discussion on surface water in this project?
There's some,
Stormwater runoff?
there's some mitigation issues that are being addressed by the applicant.
No presentation by staff on that?
So at this point, all the analysis is required at zoning has been done. This property, when they presented, they addressed the fact that a portion of it is a floodway and there's some flood zone identification on this property. They have taken that into account for their design, And as we go through the process, we do stormwater modeling that will be required of this project as well as every other project. So they will take a look at their stormwater, both in terms of their site and also with adjacent properties at that time.
Okay, so at this time, I just give the floor back to the applicant if they have any rebuttal from staff.
For the record, I'm Wayne Arnold. I don't think we have much to rebut. I just would like to clarify what's on the screen, which is related to the bonus density, and just to give you a little bit clearer picture. When staff told us they were likely to include a condition related to doing this U-turn analysis, as we've called it, we had Ted Treesh, our traffic engineer, prepare that analysis, but with that has only occurred within the last week. So I think in fairness to staff and all, that is kind of deemed a preliminary analysis, and they'll look to Mr. Treesh to go ahead and refine that. But we don't believe there's any public facility diminution of service related to the project. In fact, it's improved because of the vast reduction in trips on Bonita Beach Road.
Again, that will be determined later on, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Since there's no public comment and no further questions, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the rezoning, subject to the conditions as outlined in the staff recommendations. That's it, staff recommendations. With the conditions,
There's a staff recommendation plus the condition agreed to at the hearing, which is the revisions that I read into the record in section 8A, condition 8A. And were there any other outstanding conditions that the applicant is asking for a change on?
2C, Mary mentioned that she was striking that language related to the unit
Correct.
mix as part of the general condition.
all right.
I'll second the motion.
Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Was there any discussion? Any
Further discussion?
We had a second.
I know you had a second, but is there any other discussion? But
Oh, there's discussion.
there was some, Mr. Galloway had some questions earlier.
I don't believe that this property is ripe for development at all. I think this entire corridor from Bonita Grande all the way to I-75 needs further study. There are bigger transportation problems than we've heard today on this piece of road. So I'm gonna have to vote no.
Anything else?
Yeah, I find that the plan use, I think, is consistent with the overlay projects for that particular area, and therefore I intend to support this project.
I would basically agree with Dr. Hershenson on that.
And I find that deviation 4, for example, seems to be trying to cram more pavement and buildings into a space. As Mary said, they went to a lot of trouble to write what was appropriate in the ordinance for this, for, what is it, CBDs, Mary? Yeah, you went to a lot of trouble to write what was appropriate, and now we're asking for deviations. To me, this is once again, and Todd, the developer, I applaud your efforts and the development team, but we're trying to cram too much into the space that's available, plus the traffic patterns problems it's going to cause. I'm just not, I'm not comfortable in this, appearing before this board for a positive vote yet.
Okay, you have a right to your opinion. Anybody else want to say anything?
I really support the staff's analysis and the conditions that have been placed, including limiting signage. I pretty confident that, well, I'm not confident that the county will put the barriers in place in any timely manner, so I support that condition that the applicant put that in, if it's not being put in by the county. Sometimes county projects never happen.
It might.
And
But again, it's in the
you don't know.
future.
You don't know.
It's in the future.
So I support those conditions and the staff's analysis.
I do as well. I support the staff's analysis, and I do feel, I totally agree, you don't know about that ever getting done by the county, so I'm satisfied with the language that we put in as contingencies.
We can worry about in future. Okay, anything else? So, I guess it's time to vote. All in favor of the motion? Oh, you want to call the roll? Go ahead, please.
Gary Gambrell,
Nay.
Linda Waterhouse,
Yay.
Chairman Rassio,
Yes?
Ben Hershenson,
Yes.
Gerald Benson. Yes. And Bruce Galloway.
No.
Okay, motion is carried.
Have a break, maybe?
Now,
Thank you.
let's have a case update on Soltura at East Terry, which is kind of a similar type of development. Am I right, Mary?
Can we do a 3-minute break?
You want to take a break?
Yeah, is that possible?
No, I don't think this is going to take too long.
Okay, darn it.
Just a brief update from Michael Fegon, the planner for this case. It did go on to city council and it was approved.
Ah, okay.
They do not have to do the intersection study at Kent Road and Terry Street. They will provide the code minimum analysis at time of DO. However, they will provide a monitoring report showing analysis for 3 days during peak season to determine if their traffic impact statement counts are actually legitimate. This town was not necessarily agreeing on the detached multifamily rate, so that is the reason for that. Council was okay with the perimeter setback reduction from 15 feet to 10 feet for the principal structures and 5 feet for the fences and walls.
Good. Thank you very much.
I want to discuss this.
You want to what? You want to? I think, well, too bad the applicant has left. I just want to say that I thought their presentation was, at least the written part of it, very, very cogent and very, very lawyer-like, which is something that I'm used to. Okay, that's it.
Chairman,
Yes,
can I bring up an issue that was brought to my attention this morning?
yes, we discussed that.
I had a call from a city,
Let's get Mr. Rooney involved in this. Go ahead.
had a call from a city councilman this morning saying he's been getting a lot of feedback and concern from residents about the height of cell towers. 75 feet, 125 feet. Evidently, the zoning ordinance is fairly complex on this situation. What he's asking the zoning board for is the zoning board to consider in a meeting, put the item on the agenda, to discuss whether or not the zoning board should have an increased role in determining the location and height of a cell tower.
And whether or not it conforms to the ordinance, which is really what we have to do. We have to make sure that that what they want to do conforms.
And look at changes in the ordinance. In other words.
Well, we can recommend changes.
Right, no, absolutely, absolutely. Recommend changes in the ordinance, because the feedback that this council person is getting from the public is that we have no role in this. It's not a special exception, it's not this, it's not that. We don't have, a guy comes along and puts a 120-foot cell tower in my backyard, and I don't have anything to say about it. So he's just asking that we consider gathering some information on this, having a presentation from the staff on, is there a potential role?
I have no problem with that.
I just want to say that last week at the city council meeting, there was a lot of discussion on this issue brought up by the technology board. Matter of fact, I had a meeting last night, and I had a cot in the back room, so I was here for that meeting too last night about 5:30. And so what happened at the city council meeting was that there was a general consensus that perhaps the ordinances, the code should be looked at. And I believe, if I'm correct, there was a recommendation by the city council that have staff, I think it was community development, to come up with some suggestions or recommendations relative to the code and zoning. They did mention in passing the zoning board last night at the meeting, and I tried to clarify where this particular issue is at this particular point, and I was debating whether or not I should actually bring it up. I guess that's a question that the city council has already acted on this, have they not? I believe they have, or maybe at least suggesting that that community development get involved. I kind of agree that maybe there is a role for the zoning board, so we have the attorney here to kind of separate this out and tell us whether we do or we don't.
So I haven't been involved in the conversations with the Technology Advisory Council. I did hear that, I saw the report that they provide, and I saw the testimony they provide at the city council meeting. I'm not particularly clear what the impediment is. The issue that the Technology Advisory Council was raising was how to streamline, not to have additional public hearings necessarily, but to streamline the process of approving cell phone towers because of dropped calls, because of the need to move towards a more advanced technology in the area. So staff was directed by the city council to come up with some draft language. So I'm not sure how that language will be implemented. I've looked at the code myself. There are actually only 4 criteria for review, and any one of them needs to be found to prove it. So it's not exactly a very strict process for approval. There are significant application requirements, which have to do with location and siting standards, and there is a lot of data that's required by an applicant to provide to the city. Now, a great deal of that data, however, I'll point out, just from my first reading, and I haven't had a chance to talk with staff on this, is to essentially prove that the applicant is accurate in their estimates. So there's data regarding the location of signs, the heat maps of where I'm sorry, not signs, but towers, where the need is. Because otherwise you could have a significant number of tower companies coming in and trying just a location camp. And so there is requirements in the application data, not that the staff is trained telecommunications experts, but at least to prove up an applicant's case that in fact, there is a need for the new towers. So I think there'll be some more conversations with the Technology Advisory Council, and there could be a process, or at least there was discussion of a process of changing the approval methodology. So whether that ultimately is a staff approval to make it faster, whether it's a city council, whether it's directed to the zoning board, I think that all is something that will be up for consideration.
Great. Good, okay. I think we're adjourned. Thank you very much for your participation.